Hey there, welcome. Tonight, we're talking about a Valkyrie who broke all the rules, because sometimes even immortal warrior maidens have questionable taste when it comes to romance. Before we settle in, let me know in the comments what small, strange thing helps you fall asleep. Now, get comfortable, and let's begin. You descend through mist-choked skies, where the air smells of iron and ash, and the shriek of war still rings faintly in your ears. You feel the rush of wind across your cheekbones, except, of course, you're not made of flesh right now. You're a Valkyrie, carved of will and woven light, drifting between the battle lines like a needle through tapestry. Below, the fields of Midgard stretch wide and blood-slicked, a canvas of thunder and bone. You scan the ground for souls ready to be claimed. You are not sentimental, at least, not yet. Tonight's slaughter is modest by epic standards. A border squabble, perhaps. No heroes of renown. No king with a fancy name to pluck up and deliver unto Odin. Just mud-splattered farmers with swords, made from repurposed plowshares and the kind of desperation that makes a man dangerous. You move through them like smoke. Some see you in their final breath, wide-eyed, slack-jawed. Most do not. And then you see him. He's crouched behind a broken cartwheel, shield crooked and dented in all the wrong places. He has a gash across his brow, one eye swelling shut, and his tunic is mostly mud at this point. But he's not retreating. He's not even praying. He's laughing, just a little. The kind of laugh someone makes when they know they're either about to die or do something very stupid. He charges a mounted warrior twice his size and swings wildly, screaming something about goats. You're not sure if it's a war cry or an insult. You pause. This is not the first time you've seen a man spit in the face of death. But there's something irritatingly compelling about this one. Not because he's skilled, he's not, or noble, he's definitely not, but because he seems to know exactly how small he is in the world, and he fights anyway. And it's not just bravado. There's a strange kind of joy in him, like he's grateful for the chance to go out swinging. You float above him, unseen, unchosen. Your sisters are already calling names, lifting the noble dead into the heavens. The sky pulses gold where they pass. You are supposed to pick warriors worthy of Valhalla, those who show honor, courage, strategic brilliance. You are not supposed to pause mid-selection because a grubby mortal made you tilt your head. That's a beginner's mistake. That's how stories start. Bad ones. You shake it off and turn away, but you still glance back. Once, just once. It's not love, not yet. But something ancient and inconvenient stirs under your breastplate. Something like curiosity, or fate, sharpening its teeth. Historically speaking, the idea of Valkyries as purely divine warrior maidens is a bit romanticized. Scholars now agree they likely evolved from earlier, darker figures, death spirits, or battle demons. In some skaldic verses, they drink blood and weave intestines into fate cloth. Delightful imagery for bedtime, yes. And yet, over centuries, their PR improved significantly, especially once they were folded into courtly love poems and opera plots. Your version of this Valkyrie is somewhere between terrifying war angel and awkward junior employee having an off day. Down below, the battle peters out. Your strange little mortal has somehow survived, barely. He sits alone now, legs splayed, leaning against a stump that might once have been part of a wagon. He's eating something, an onion, maybe. You hover for a moment too long, watching him peel it with the point of a dagger. And that's when he looks up. He shouldn't see you. Mortals almost never do, but he blinks, squints, cocks his head like he just caught something out of the corner of his good eye. His lip quirks. Are you one of those ghost birds? Then he mutters. Or did I finally bleed enough to start seeing flying ladies? You don't respond, obviously. That would be against protocol. You vanish like a sigh. But your thoughts don't. Historians still argue whether Valkyries were originally envisioned as literal figures or poetic metaphors. Were they the personification of death, or did people really believe they hovered above real-world battles, choosing who lived and died? The sagas, inconsistent, as always, offer contradictory portraits. Some Valkyries are sisters of fate. Others are Odin's glorified fetch quests with helmets. In some traditions, they marry mortals. In others, they leave those mortals horribly cursed or awkwardly happy. You shouldn't care. This mortal shouldn't matter. But he does. And as you rise once more into the evening haze, your sister's laughter echoing through the clouds, you find yourself wondering if you can find him again. Not to collect him yet, but to watch, just watch, maybe learn his name. It's nothing. A passing interest, surely. Quirky footnote. In one obscure saga fragment, a Valkyrie accidentally falls in love with a mortal who believes she's a hallucination caused by swamp gas and fermented turnip wine. It ends poorly, of course, but he does invent a drink in her honor, which is honestly kind of sweet. You ascend through the amber sky, but your heart lags behind a beat. Or 3. You wait. Days pass, or perhaps weeks. It's hard to tell when you live mostly outside of time. But you find yourself circling Midgard more often than necessary, drifting through valleys and meadows that smell of smoke and sheep, hoping, absurdly, to glimpse a man whose name you don't even know. It's unprofessional, it's ridiculous, but there you are, loitering invisibly above a goat market. And then, one evening, you see him. His eye looks better, his brows still scarred, though he scratches at it absently while balancing on a crooked ladder that looks like it was made by someone drunk and resentful. He hasn't noticed you. Of course he hasn't. You are a celestial being. He is a sweaty man covered in moss. Still, you hover. You learn his name from a neighbor, Eirik. No noble lineage, no enchanted sword, no dramatic backstory. Just Eirik. He chops wood, fishes poorly, and tells jokes to livestock like they're an audience. You watch him barter 3 turnips for a spoon once. You are intrigued. You begin to visit more frequently. You convince yourself it's harmless. You don't speak to him. You don't touch the world. But you do begin to follow him. When he walks the hills, when he swims in the river, when he falls asleep beside a fire with a half-eaten biscuit clutched in one hand. You tell yourself you're observing, studying humanity. Odin would probably approve. Except Odin definitely would not approve. You're a Valkyrie, a chooser of the slain, not a cosmic babysitter. Certainly not a sky-stalking admirer with a crush on a man who thinks mead counts as hydration. Certain sagas describe a Valkyrie whispering advice into a chosen man's ear before battle. Others suggest more direct involvement, even mid-fight. One particularly debated passage from Hervoror Saga, OK Hydrex, implies a Valkyrie may have healed a mortal's wound using spit and moss. Romantic or gross? Scholars are divided. You are not healing Eirik. You are not even helping. But one day, when he tumbles from a tree while chasing a squirrel, you catch him. Just a little. Just enough to slow the fall. He lands hard, but not bone-snappingly so. He groans, rolls over, mutters something about the squirrel cheating, and doesn't even realize he's alive because of you. You feel that dangerous warmth again, the one curling behind your ribs. It's not affection, definitely not that. And then, he sees you. Really sees you. You're not fully visible. You're still half shadow, half light, but his eyes lock on yours like a hammer hitting an anvil. He blinks once, twice. You're real, he says, stunned. You're blazing stars. You're real. You try to vanish, but something holds you in place. Curiosity or shame. He staggers upright, dusts himself off, and does something unexpected. He bows. Not perfectly, not gracefully, but with a kind of honest awe that makes your stomach twist in ways the Eddas never prepared you for. I knew it, he says. I bloody knew it. You've been following me, haven't you? You deny nothing. You say nothing. He grins. You're not here to kill me, are you? Silence. Because I have to say, that would be wildly unfair after everything I've survived, including my cousin's soup. And just like that, you laugh. It's small, more like a puff of air, but it's real, and it breaks something open between you. The wind stills, the birds quiet, the sky watches. You descend cautiously and take on a shape he can see. Leather armor, wind-whipped hair, eyes the color of storm clouds. You say his name, not as a question, as a fact, Eirik. His mouth falls open. You speak, properly, for the first time. You explain that you are a Valkyrie, that you are bound by duty, not desire, that this moment is a mistake. And yet, you do not leave. He listens. And then, instead of running or praying or proposing, he says, "You're the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. And I once shared a tent with a man who ate only onions for 7 days." In early Norse societies, onion breath was actually used as a makeshift battlefield diagnostic tool. If a wounded man smelled of onion after being fed one, it was assumed his guts were perforated, and therefore, well, not worth saving. Medicine, not yet, but as something older, something stranger. Two souls perched on the brink of myth, trying not to look down. Historians still argue whether Valkyries could feel mortal emotions. The sagas contradict themselves. In some tales they love fiercely, even tragically. In others, they vanish the moment feelings arise, as though sentiment contaminates their purpose. What's certain is that every story that begins like this ends one of two ways, badly or worse. But for now, you sit beside Eirik under a night thick with stars, and you do not think of endings, only of how warm the fire feels, and how his laugh curls into the smoke like something sacred. You don't plan your second meeting. It simply happens, like rain or raven feathers, or divine punishment. You hover above Eirik's valley, murmuring excuses to yourself. Surely, it's important to check in. You almost let him die once. Professional courtesy demands a follow-up. He's in the woods again, attempting to trap something that may be a hare or may be his neighbor's escaped cat. Either way, he looks baffled by the loop of twine in his hands. You step out of the mist without thinking, just as he mutters, "Right?" Loop goes under or over. He startles, loses his grip, and the snare snaps upward, catching him in the knee. "I surrender," he says immediately, looking up at you with theatrical despair. "Take me, glowing sky ghost." You raise an eyebrow. He grins like he's just won something. It's harder to keep distance after that. He tells you stories, most of them clearly fabricated. His brother once arm-wrestled a troll. He himself once convinced a priest a goat was possessed. He's a walking contradiction, painfully mortal, utterly absurd, and somehow brave enough to banter with a literal death maiden. And you are losing your grip. You walk beside him. You talk. You trace shapes in the air as he drags firewood through puddles. You spend long twilight hours watching his hands, how they move when he works, how they tremble when he thinks too hard. It's not just curiosity anymore. It's something deeper. He asks about your wings. You deny having any, but your voice wavers. One night, he offers you a flower. It's not a good one, mostly wilted, slightly muddy, probably stolen from a grave. You take it anyway. That night, you dream, which you've never done before. Somewhere in the distance, the Norns stir. In Norse mythology, the Norns, Urdur, Verdandi, and Skuld, are the weavers of fate. They decide the destiny of gods and men alike, spinning threads beneath the roots of Yggdrasil. The idea of a Valkyrie tangling her thread with immortals, that's not just taboo. It's metaphysically messy. Historians still argue whether the sagas that depict Valkyrie mortal unions are symbolic, romanticized propaganda, or warnings disguised as bedtime stories. But your thread is already tangled. In Asgard, there's always clanging. In Asgard, there's always clanging. Spears on shields, horns in the air. Thor's latest overcompensation echoing through the clouds. Down here, you hear wind in grass, river water nudging stones, a man whispering old songs to himself when he thinks no one listens. One evening, you find him kneeling beside a small cairn, a grave, his mother's. He doesn't see you at first. He talks softly, telling the stone about his week, the goat's abscess. The stolen spoon returned with an apology and half a turnip. You ache, watching, not because he's sad, but because he's trying. Mortal grief is terrifying in its persistence. He sees you watching and smiles sadly. Do Valkyries have mothers? You pause. You don't know the answer. Or maybe you do, but it's buried under centuries of iron and frost. I don't remember, you say. That's worse, he says, and offers you half a roasted leek. You eat it, it's terrible. But he's so pleased, you accept. You pretend it's divine. Which is ironic, because actual divine food doesn't taste like it was boiled in guilt and bark. The next morning, the sky is thick with ravens. Hugin and Munin, Odin's eyes in the world, circle just above the treetops. You sense their scrutiny. They don't swoop, don't screech. They simply watch. You know what that means. Someone has noticed your absence from Valhalla, your unusual lingering. Someone, probably Heimdall, that nosy bridge troll, has whispered your name into Odin's ear. You should flee. You should erase your presence and return to the golden halls before your disobedience becomes divine scandal. But you don't. You stay with Eirik that night. He tells you a story about a dream he had, a woman with wings singing him awake. He doesn't say your name, but he looks at you like he's already memorized it. You don't sleep. You stand guard. And when dawn comes, you taste fear for the first time. Fringe tidbit. Some ancient Norse households kept small carved figures called house spirits, or believed to ward off misfortune or divine wrath. These were sometimes buried under doorways or hidden in rafters. Eirik has one. You saw him whisper to it once. He thinks you're luck. You are not. You've changed something. The air smells of tension, like the sharp before-storm scent of wet stone and regret. You feel the threads twisting. The Norns tug, but it's too late. The trap has been sprung, and you are the bait and the beast all at once. One night, as Eirik sleeps and you sit watchfully beside him, a shadow falls across the doorway. It's not an enemy, not a man. It's the sense of something larger, ancient, wrapped in thunderclouds and law. You whisper his name once, then vanish. Back to Asgard, back to duty, back to pretending you aren't burning. You arrive in Asgard the way thunder arrives in a valley, unannounced but inevitable. Heimdall doesn't look at you as you pass the Bifrost. His gaze is fixed outward, but you know he saw everything. His silence hums with judgment, like a harp string pulled too tight. The great hall is brimming with celebration. Valkyries laugh, gods boast, and the newly arrived dead are still wide-eyed and blood-damp, trying to make sense of their afterlife buffet. Odin raises a drinking horn in salute to a brawl breaking out over roasted boar. Everything is as it should be, except you. You stand still amid the golden light, polished shields, and endless meat platters, and you think of Eirik's crooked smile, his dented shield, his goat, probably eating something poisonous in his absence. You try to settle back in. You try to resume your work. Another battle, another soul to claim. You land on a field where men cry out and iron sings. You do what you've always done. Choose the brave, touch their foreheads, and carry them away. But something's changed. You can't stop seeing him, not on the field, but in the absences, the moments between strikes, the slow rise of smoke that reminds you of campfire whispers and botched vegetable stew. You wonder if he still whispers to that grave. You wonder if he dreams. Then, one morning, you wake with dirt on your hands. You don't remember going to Midgard. You only remember standing in a field, breathing mortal air, heart hammering in a rhythm that doesn't belong to the divine. The gods, no, they don't speak of it directly, not yet. But Loki winks too sharply. Sif watches you the way a cat watches a teetering shelf. Even Freya has a quiet knowing behind her smile, as though she once tasted something just as forbidden and let it rot slowly in her mouth. You try to bury yourself in duty. You double your shifts. You escort souls until your wings ache and your eyes sting from the endless gray between life and death. But even the fallen warriors look familiar now. One of them hums a song Eirik sang. Another wears a talisman that looks like the one he carved from bone and twine. You're haunted, but not by the dead. And then you see him again, not by magic, not by accident. You choose to walk the mist. You slip through the edges of dream and field, until you find him sitting beneath a twisted pine, sharpening a knife that probably won't help if a bear sneezes near him. He startles when you appear, but he doesn't look surprised. "You're late," he says. "I wasn't coming," you reply. "Same thing," he says, and offers you a seat. You sit. You watch his hands. He hands you the knife. You hand it back. Neither of you says what you mean. This goes on for weeks, maybe months. Time bends oddly in places where gods trespass. You meet in secret, beneath fog and between stars. You speak less. You listen more. You breathe in time with him. One night, he tells you he's afraid of you. You ask, almost smiling. "No," he says. "Of losing something I never really had." And there it is, that crack, that mortal softness, that unbearable hope. In history, there's an old belief found in Germanic and Norse traditions that to speak love aloud invites loss. Ancient inscriptions show runes scratched into wood and stone with partial declarations, half names, half phrases, like the writers couldn't finish for fear of consequence. Scholars still argue whether this was superstition or simply poetic restraint. But either way, you understand it now. Saying too much is dangerous, because Odin does know. He was always going to know. It happens on a night when the air is heavy with impending frost. You stand with Eirik beside a lake, watching the water go still as stars sharpen above it. He touches your hand. You don't pull away. You lean in, forehead to forehead, like warriors before a final charge. A noise splits the stillness. Metal on stone. Wings that aren't yours, they've found you. You look up, and the sky burns. 3 Valkyries descend in silence. Their faces are masked, their eyes silverlit. They do not speak, they do not need to. One carries a chain, one a spear. The third, your sister in arms once, carries the expression you wore, your first time watching a soul fall in love with dying. Eirik steps forward, but you place a hand on his chest. "No," you say, and feel the truth splinter down your throat. You face them. You do not resist. The spear goes through your shadow, not your flesh. The chain wraps, not your wrists, but your name, twisting it back into something acceptable, something owned. They take you without touch, but you feel the parting like skin torn from flame. Eirik watches, unmoving, as you vanish. And now, he is alone. You return not through triumph, but through silence. Not a word is spoken as the other Valkyries guide you back across the glimmering arch of Bifrost. Though the bridge hums underfoot like a held breath, the colors have dimmed. You wonder if that's your perception or some subtle divine disapproval. Either way, it feels colder than usual. In the halls of Asgard, the air is dense, not with smoke or mead, but with expectation. Odin sits on his throne, with his ravens perched lazily on either shoulder. Hugin, who remembers everything, and Manin, who understands too much. You keep your eyes low. That's what they expect of you now. He doesn't raise his voice, that would almost be merciful. He only gestures, and suddenly you're no longer in the hall, but in a smaller chamber, one you've never been in before. Walls carved from ashwood, runes etched so deeply they pulse with light. You realize these are binding runes, and your name flickers among them. Odin doesn't ask what you were doing. He tells you. He describes the first glance, the second meeting, the scent of pine on your cloak when you returned to Valhalla. He even mentions Eirik's pet goat with the faintest hint of condescension. "A mortal with a goat named Soup," he says, as though this is the greatest blasphemy of all. You don't interrupt. There's no point. Odin has already decided, and yet he doesn't banish you. Instead, he reassigns you, which is worse. You're no longer to fly above battlefields or whisper into the ears of dying heroes. You're grounded. Your wings, still there, still visible, are now useless ornament, the divine equivalent of being benched. They send you to the records, a glowing hall of long scrolls, hovering tablets, and ancient scribes who have not smiled in at least 5 centuries. Your job is to catalog, transcribe accounts of bravery, compile victory songs, and yes, read and edit those long, meandering warrior poems where everything rhymes with honor. There's a theory among scholars that certain Norse myths were softened over time, deliberately rewritten in post-Christian influence to downplay divine flaws and complicate the raw, messy bits. Historians still argue whether the romantic tales involving Valkyries and mortals were ever part of the original oral tradition or added later for dramatic effect. You now live among those rewritten scrolls, forced to clean them up, and each time you scratch out a line about love, a part of you feels erased too. You spend your days surrounded by quiet, not peaceful quiet, the sterile kind, the kind that smells of old ink and self-betrayal. But at night, you still dream. You see Eirik walking, always walking, through snow, through fire, through forest, thick with whispering branches. He carries nothing now but a knife and an old bit of rope. In one dream, he speaks your name. In another, he stands at the foot of the Bifrost, looking up, not hopeful, not angry, just waiting. You wake with the taste of smoke in your throat. Loki visits you once, unannounced, of course. He appears halfway through a scroll about the Battle of Five Shields and leans casually against your desk like a cat who knows it's not supposed to be on the counter. So, he says, "How's celibate purgatory?" You don't answer. He grins wider. You know not all gods enforce their rules so strictly. Some of us find mortal chaos rather charming. You stare at him. Why are you here? He shrugs. Curiosity, boredom, mischief, the usual buffet. But mostly, I wanted to see how long it would take before you did something stupid again. I'm not planning to, you say. Oh good, he replies. That means you'll do it sooner. Then he's gone, and you're left with your ink-stained fingers and the scroll that smells faintly of old sweat and tragedy. The strange thing is, Asgard doesn't look any different. The sun still glints on spears. The mead still flows. Freya still laughs too loudly at jokes that aren't funny. But you are different. You move through it like a ghost. And deep down, you start to wonder if that's what they wanted all along. Not obedience, but distance, disconnection. A way to make you forget him. You don't forget. One morning, if Asgard even has mornings, you're walking past the armory when you see something strange. A weapon, not divine, not even particularly well made. A sword, chipped at the edges, its grip worn smooth by mortal hands. It's his. No one notices you take it. You bring it back to your chamber, unwrap the cloth carefully, and stare at the blade. There are scratch marks near the hilt, faint rune etchings, half-carved and abandoned. One of them is your name, misspelled. You don't cry. Valkyries don't cry. But your throat tightens until you can't breathe properly. And for a long while, you just sit there, sword across your lap, heart full of static. You don't know how it got here. Maybe Odin allowed it. Maybe Heimdall turned away. Maybe Loki slipped it through the cracks, just to see what you'd do. Whatever the case, it's a message. One he knew you'd understand. You haven't seen him in what feels like years now, but he hasn't given up. So maybe neither will you. The problem with divine rules is they tend to hold up well until they don't. Until someone forgets to lock a gate, or someone else remembers they were once something more than a celestial scribe with lovely penmanship and a broken heart. You stare at the sword every night now. It sits under your bed, wrapped in soft wool, its presence more comforting than any fire. You run your fingers along the hilt until your thumb finds the dent shaped like a wolf's bite. It makes you smile, remembering the story Eirik told, something about a cursed ham and a very territorial pack leader. You're not entirely sure it wasn't just a drunken metaphor. Then one evening, as twilight pools in the corners of the sky, you feel the air ripple. Not physically, not even magically. It's subtler, like the gods inhaling all at once and forgetting to exhale. A hush stretches across the Bifrost. Birds vanish mid-song. Even Loki keeps his mouth shut, which is frankly unnatural. He's come back. You can't explain how you know, only that you do. Somehow, impossibly, Eirik has reached the edge of Asgard. You slip from your chamber, like fog, through reeds. The sword is strapped to your back now, though you're not sure if it's for protection or penance. You take no wings, no armor. just your heartbeat, loud in your throat. The guards are distracted, for once, or perhaps asleep, or perhaps bribed. Or perhaps the Allfather has decided to let this play out like a theater piece, where everyone knows the ending but watches anyway for the swelling violin. You reach the outer gates and duck beneath the rune-tethered arch. You feel the crackle of old magic there, but nothing stops you. No alarms, no Valkyrie intercept squads, just a thin trail of footsteps in mud. You find him in a grove near the threshold. He looks worse for wear. Blood on his knuckles, a limp in one leg, and what you hope is troll spit on his sleeve. But he's breathing, standing, smiling even. "I thought I'd missed you," he says, and it's the stupidest thing he could possibly say. You kiss him before he can say anything dumber. He holds you like he's still not sure this is real, like you might vanish if he blinks too hard. "I brought you something," you whisper, and press the sword into his hands. He looks at it like it's a baby bird, and he's not sure which way is the beak. "I think I chipped it more," he admits sheepishly. "There was a fire giant situation." You laugh, and it echoes far too loudly for stealth. It's reckless. It's perfect. Then the sky cracks. Not thunder. Not lightning. Not even sound, really. Just a presence. Something impossibly large and cold, folding into the world like a divine accusation. Odin arrives in the form of storm and shadow. His wolves flank him. His ravens dive like arrows. The air smells of smoke and old judgment. But even now, even in this theater of wrath, he does not shout. He simply looks at you. Then at Eirik. Then almost wearily at the sword. "I warned you," he says, not with anger, with disappointment, which is somehow worse. Beside you, Eirik shifts. Not away from you, closer. You feel his breath quicken, see his eyes flick between you and the spear forming in Odin's hand. You step in front of him. This is, technically, an act of treason. Maybe heroism, possibly both. Definitely ill-advised. The gods don't move. For one long moment, you are just a fallen Valkyrie with a heart condition and very bad timing. Then someone else steps forward. Freya. She's barefoot, of course, and glowing faintly, because that's her thing. She walks between Odin and you, like this is a family disagreement over soup ingredients, not a divine standoff. "Perhaps," she says slowly, "we let love fall apart on its own." It usually does. You want to hug her, or punch her, maybe both. Odin stares at her, one eye colder than the void. There are laws. Freya smiles, sweet as poison. There are exceptions. It's an old game. This one, rules bent by riddles. Decrees softened by poetic metaphor. Historians still argue whether the pantheon worked like a rigid monarchy, or more like a very dysfunctional extended family. Judging by this scene, it's both. Eventually, Odin sighs. "Very well," he mutters. "Let them play mortal." Then he vanishes. Not in a puff of smoke. Just gone, like the punchline of a very long joke. You're stunned. So is Eirik. So is everyone except Freya, who simply winks and says, "Don't waste it." And just like that, you have time, not eternity, not permission, just a sliver of borrowed days before someone rewrites the rules again. You take his hand. You walk away from the gates of Asgard, not triumphantly, not foolishly, just together. Behind you, the gods turn back to their games, their councils, their endless wars, but none of them notice the flowers blooming where you step. And for now, that's enough. You've barely had time to catch your breath before the sky closes behind you. No path back, no godly loopholes, just the long walk into Midgard, with Eirik beside you and a strange silence blooming in your chest. The days that follow are not legendary. They are painfully mortal. The first night, it rains through the roof of the abandoned wayhouse where you hide. Eirik curls around you like a crooked tree grown too close to the wind. You talk about everything and nothing, about the shape of clouds, about whether Odin meant what he said, about which mushrooms definitely aren't edible. You fall asleep mid-sentence, still wearing your boots. In the morning, the roof is still leaking, but the birds are louder than your doubts. You move from place to place, careful, and quiet. You no longer fly, you walk. You learn to cook things that taste like wood but fill your belly. You develop a suspicious fondness for onions. And Eirik, well, he's not the same man who once hacked through a warband with a rusted axe. He limps more, he laughs slower, but his eyes still find you like you're the only flame in a storm. One night, he tells you about the battle where he first saw you. He describes the way your braid caught the light mid-swing, and how ridiculous it felt to fall in love with something that might have been a hallucination caused by blood loss. He says it was the most beautiful illusion he's ever had. You punch him in the arm for being dramatic, but you hold him tighter, too. The truth, of course, is that time has teeth, and mortality is hungry. You notice it first in his hands, once steady as stone, now trembling when he sharpens his knife. You want to believe it's the cold. You lie to yourself about it for 3 weeks. Then he coughs blood into his sleeve and pretends he spilled wine. He doesn't have to say it. You already know he's dying. Which, to be fair, he was always doing. That's the fine print of being human. But it's faster now, messier, the kind of decline no sword can block. You ask Freya for help. Whisper into the roots of an ash tree until your voice cracks. You get no answer, not even a squirrel offering cryptic advice. You try healing charms, nothing. You try prayer. You've never been good at prayer. Eirik, meanwhile, insists on walking every morning, even when he coughs, even when he sways. He says he wants to see things, sunrises, frost on bark, your face when you're trying not to cry. That last one he calls his favorite. One morning, he stops. You catch him just before he falls. You sit with him in the snow, his head in your lap, the sky heavy with winter above you. He smiles like he's exactly where he's supposed to be. This isn't fair, you whisper. He chuckles. Didn't peg you for someone who wanted fair. You laugh, a sound too sharp to be gentle. You should have stayed dead, you mutter, bitter and aching. Would've, he says, if I hadn't seen you. You don't respond. You just brush the snow from his hair and pretend you have a plan. Later, when he sleeps, and it's sleep now, not rest, something deeper and thinner, you leave the hut and scream into the wind. Your voice doesn't echo. The gods do not answer, but a fox does trot past, gives you a bored look, and keeps walking. You take that as a sign to keep going. You return to find Eirik carving something into the inside of the door. A symbol, one of protection, one of memory, one that shouldn't work, but it glows, just faintly, like an ember refusing to die. You kneel beside him, stunned. Where did you learn that? He shrugs. Stole it from a book. Might have been upside down. The symbol pulses once more, then fades. A trick, maybe, or something greater. Historians still argue whether mortal magic ever truly worked, or whether the belief in it was its own kind of spell. You don't care. For a moment, the world shifted. That's enough. In the end, Eirik doesn't cry. He just holds your hand and says, "Don't forget me. You promise, though you don't trust your memory anymore." It's heavy with things you wish you hadn't learned. When he goes, it's quiet. No choirs, no thunder, just his breath, slipping away like mist over a lake. You sit with him until the fire burns low. Then you take his sword, the one you gave him, and bury it with him beneath the hill. No stones, no runes, just earth and sky and your heartbeat, hollow as a drum. You stay a long while. You talk to him sometimes, about the weather, about the birds, about how the roof finally stopped leaking after he patched it with half a cloak and something that might have been cheese. Eventually, you get up. Eventually, you leave, but not before you etch one last symbol into the wood of the hut, a Valkyrie's feather. The road back to the world is slow and clumsy. Your feet know how to fly, but your body now remembers what it's like to fall. You make your way south, away from the hill where Eirik sleeps, one step at a time. The sword he once held, a gift from your hand, your heart, now rides across your back. It's too heavy, but you refuse to leave it behind. There's a restlessness gnawing at you. Mortality has left a sour taste, but so has inaction. You keep walking, not just because there's nowhere to go, but because the idea of standing still feels worse. Eventually, the whispers begin. Not the gods, not yet. No, these are human whispers. At the edge of towns, behind hut doors. In the breath of old farmers who swear they saw a woman glowing at dusk with a blade wrapped in sorrow. Some think you're a ghost, some think you're a curse. One traveling bard writes a whole ballad about you, calling you the sword widow, and manages to make your story rhyme with tuna. You do not approve, but the tale spreads, and something odd starts to happen. People begin to leave things for you. Offerings, almost not of gold or prayers, but of possibility. A woman gives you a map, etched in soot. A child offers a scrap of what looks like a vaknut, carved from bone. An old man stares into your eyes and says, "He said you'd try." That's when you understand. Eirik planned something. You follow the map, as ridiculous as it seems. It leads you not to a ruin or a shrine, but to a cave so deep it feels like it coils through the spine of Yggdrasil itself. And at the bottom of that cave is something that should not be there. A mirror. Not polished bronze, not still water, but a true mirror, obsidian, black as regret. You step close. You expect to see yourself. Instead, you see him just for a flicker, a shape behind a veil, a hand raised, not in greeting, but in warning. Your pulse shatters. The mirror cracks, and you know what you have to do. You leave the cave with three things: a headache, a direction, and the sinking suspicion that this will end badly again. But you were a Valkyrie once, and even stripped of title, feather, and flight, you are still something else. Stubborn. You seek answers the way warriors seek a blade's edge. You consult a seer who drinks from a skull and claims the 9 realms are all layered like onion rings. He's insufferable, but he's also right about a few things, like the fact that Asgard can be breached, but not by force, not anymore. You need an anchor. You need something from him. You remember the symbol he carved into the hut door. You go back, praying the wind hasn't eaten it. It's still there, just barely. You press your palm to it and whisper a name that doesn't belong in this world anymore. The wind shifts. Far above, in Asgard, something stirs. Something smells mortal and myth-tangled and entirely inconvenient. You don't care. You build a fire. You pour everything into it. Old spells, stolen runes, fragments of songs that only Valkyries use to sing. You cut your hand and mix the blood with ash. Then you speak 3 truths into the flame. You loved him. You lost him. You're not done. The fire answers by turning blue, and you step through. It isn't flight, exactly. It's falling sideways through time and symbol. The air tastes like thunder. Your skin remembers feathers. You are not human here, but you're not divine either. You are something in between. You land hard. The ground beneath you gleams with starlight. You are not in Asgard proper. You're in its forgotten hem, just beyond the halls, where legends rot and unspoken things go to rust. You don't see him, not yet, but you feel him, and you aren't alone. A voice slides through the shadows. You shouldn't be here. You turn. A figure approaches, shimmering, grim, unmistakably Valkyrie. You recognize her. She trained you once, taught you how to grip a soul like a thread and guide it through the fog. Her eyes are hard now. You broke the accord. You shrugged. Wouldn't be the first to crack a rule for love. She doesn't smile. Most of them died screaming. You say nothing. She raises a blade. You don't flinch. Is this really worth it? She asks, almost gently. All of this, for one man. You glance around, at the stone, the sky, the shimmer of gates just ahead. Then you nod. Her blade lowers. You have one chance, she says. One glance, then you vanish. If you linger, she doesn't need to finish. You walk forward, and there he is, Eirik, or some version of him. Behind the veil, seated on a bench carved from runes and silence. He doesn't speak. He can't. But he sees you. And for a moment, the whole world forgets how to breathe. You raise a hand. He mirrors you, and then he fades. Just like that, the world tilts, and you fall back, out of the veil, out of the gods' patience, out of the place you never should have breached. You land hard. Again, the fire is out, the sky is gray, your hands are empty, but you saw him, and he saw you. That will have to be enough. You do not sleep that night. Sleep is a gift given to those who belong somewhere, mortal or divine. You are neither now, and the thread of your tale stretches taut across too many boundaries, woven too tightly into fate for rest to make sense anymore. The place where you land feels like a scar in the earth. Trees hunch against each other, whispering things you can't translate. Your breath curls in the air, even though it isn't cold. Everything feels unstitched, like you've slipped behind the seams of reality, and the world is politely pretending not to notice. You sit there, knees against your chest, sword across your lap, and you wait. For what? You're not sure. Divine punishment, perhaps. A raven on Odin's errand. A Valkyrie with orders and no patience for your nostalgia, but no one comes. And that silence feels louder than judgment. Eventually, you move south, again. Always south, like the wind is pushing you there, or maybe the guilt. Along the way, you leave signs behind, not intentionally at first, just fingerprints in ash, a pressed rune in damp earth, a scarf knotted around a branch. But then you start to do it on purpose, tiny offerings of memory, in case someone ever tries to follow. Historians still argue whether Valkyries were ever meant to love. Some say they were only arms of Odin's will, extensions of his war hunger. Others claim they were goddesses in their own right, born of sky and chaos, and entirely capable of foolish emotion. A third camp insists that love stories were mortal inventions, too human to apply to winged women of the battlefield. None of them know what it's like to ache for someone who no longer exists, and fewer still know what it means when songs begin, because soon the bards start singing. First in whispers, then in taverns, then on long roads and aboard low ships. They sing of the Valkyrie who loved a man, they sing of the man who tried to storm the stars, they sing of the gate, the glance, the fire, of the gods who looked away just long enough. They get the details wrong, of course. In some versions, you become a wraith. In others, he's resurrected with a kiss that melts the bifrost. One particularly bold tale suggests you both rode a lightning wolf into hell to slap Loki. None of that happened, but the stories bloom like moss, persistent, soft, unkilled. You pass a village one day, and you hear the children play acting the story. One girl raises a stick like a spear and shouts for Eirik before giggling and falling over in the dirt. You almost smile. Then again, what is myth, if not a badly remembered truth? Mainstream historians often cite the Valkyrie Brynhildr when discussing divine mortal romance, pointing to her tragic tale with Sigurd. But your story is different. You weren't punished for love. Not exactly. You were punished for trying to change the script, for breaking choreography in a dance meant to be rehearsed across centuries. Still, here you are, and that matters. Eventually, you reach a hill overlooking a fjord. It feels familiar. The wind moves the same way it did that night, the night he gave you the knot, the night you knew it couldn't last. You sit, you breathe, and you realize you've become something else, not just a fallen Valkyrie. Not just a woman with a sword and a memory. You are a story. You are the kind of tale that wraps itself around campfires and feast halls, around lips that taste of mead and memory. And that means, even though you lost, you also won, because the gods hate a mess. But the people, they adore one, and there is no mess messier than forbidden love between realms. There's even a shrine here now, small, carefully built, from river stones, tucked under the crook of a leaning pine. No name carved, but you know it's for you. Someone has left a feather there, not yours, but close enough. You kneel beside it. You press your forehead to the cool stone. You whisper nothing, because everything that needs to be said has already been woven into the air. Behind you, the wind changes direction, just slightly. Like someone up there finally noticed you've stopped running. You wait. Still, no judgment comes. No spear, no flame. Maybe they've finally learned something from you, or maybe they're just tired. Either way, you rise, sword still on your back, his knot still tucked into the folds of your cloak, your name still echoing behind every song that ends in a sigh, and you walk on, because what else would you do? You're not trying to reach him anymore. That part is over. That part is ash. But the story, that part's just getting interesting. By now, the world has grown older around you, folding in slow creases. Towns have replaced clans, languages drifted like cloud banks, and gods, once shouted at the sky, are now whispered or forgotten entirely. But you're still walking. The ache in your feet is familiar. It anchors you. You walk through a market where a boy is selling tiny carved Valkyries, his fingers stained with resin. You nod to him, and he grins, having no idea you are his muse, his bedtime story, the shape that flew through his grandfather's songs. He offers you one for free. You pay double. You pass a burial mound that hums, not loudly, just a subtle throb in the soil, like bones remembering battle. You whisper Eric's name, just once. The earth holds it like a secret. Then, one morning, you see her, another Valkyrie, hair braided to the waist, wings folded, standing by a tree like she's been waiting centuries for you to show up. She does not speak. She does not need to. You recognize the look, half warning, half sorrow, like the kind you used to wear before everything turned upside down. You walk past her, not defiant, just done, and she lets you, because the war's moved on. Because your exile no longer matters, because they fear you less than they pity you. And honestly, you're fine with that. Later, you reach a coast, not the end of the world, but it feels like it. Waves slam rocks with the boredom of immortality. Gulls scream like tiny flapping prophets. You sit, knees hugged to your chest, and try to remember Eric's laugh. Not the one in the war camp, or even the cabin, but the one when he tripped over his own sword, trying to impress you. The laugh that sounded like he didn't quite trust happiness to stay. You remember it just long enough to cry. Then the sky darkens, not with storm, but stars. You lie back and let the ground cradle you. The wind threads through your hair like a lover come too late. You speak aloud, to no one in particular. You say, "Tell them we were real," and the waves answer as best they can, by refusing to stop. In some rural parts of Scandinavia, there are still folk beliefs that seeing a swan at twilight means a Valkyrie is nearby. No one says what happens if you follow her, probably because no one ever comes back. Mainstream scholars would place Valkyries firmly in the realm of myth, though more and more acknowledge that their stories, especially the love ones, mirror deep-rooted Norse fears about fate, loyalty, and the consequences of challenging power. As for you, your fate is neither doom nor glory, it's legacy. Your love did not save him, but it changed the song. And long after even the gods have faded, your tale remains, told in mead halls, sung under breath, painted into the margins of sagas that don't quite know where to place you. They never say your name the same way twice, but they always remember how you fell. Not down, not from grace, but into love, and then out of time. So now, as you drift from this story, let your breath grow slower and deeper. Let your body soften like fresh snow settling on a quiet hill. You are safe here, wrapped in feather and firelight, far from gods and grief and thundering hooves. The Valkyrie's tale is finished, for now, and her footsteps fade gently into the hush of twilight. Rest in the space between stories. Let the stars above you pulse like slow, ancient heartbeats. There is no war here, no oath to keep, just stillness, just the lull of memory. Sleep well, dear listener. The saga will wait. End of script. Sweet D.